All right. So today we're going to talk about the sales and the sales invoices screen. And I know we talked about potentially adding payments, and we're going to add that in the EFT ACH training session. But I probably should show you, just because we're talking about cash sales as being an invoice type, how, and just briefly go into cash management and show you how that flows in there. We won't talk too much about it, but just so you guys can see it through. And then we'll touch base on it again when we do the ACH training. So we'll go ahead and start and go into the sales module. And let's go ahead and briefly talk about there's the two different menus in this screen where you create new invoices. So in the activities section, we have the invoices menu, which shows the invoices grid. So if you click that for me, this will have all previously entered invoices, whether it's posted or unposted. So historical will be in here of all types from all the modules, including like the transports invoices, any car fueling invoices, or the transactions in that case, and invoices as well. And pretty much everything that you can think of that's going to a customer will be in this screen. Go ahead and minimize this for me, Jimmy. And then at the bottom where it says create, that section also has a button called New Invoice. So if you go ahead and click New Invoice for me, it will just bring you directly into the invoice screen, so you don't have to see all the grid. So what I find it is, like, some people who just want to do data entry and don't want to look at historical data or duplicate a record, this is where you would go. Now, I find it that a lot of my invoices are repetitive for me here, that I can just go ahead and find an existing one, duplicate it, and change my numbers. So not everybody's going to work in the same way because your gallons change, your price changes, so you might as well enter a totally new invoice. But just know that you could get to it from the Create section, because many of the menus will have that Create section, so you can use that as well. So let's go ahead and close this screen, and we'll go back to the invoice grid, because we'll do it my way. And then click New from there. So there's a few things that I wanted to note that I think that are kind of important just because they're the way we handle it in I-21 versus Origin. So in I-21, there in the customer file, there's a business warehouse location. So that way I can show you where that is in the setup. Go ahead and bring up customer code Amazon for me. I'm going to try and go in order of what I wrote in my PowerPoint today. Okay, so and then click the hyperlink right next to Amazon, the customer, there you go. And that'll open up the customer file for Amazon. And then click the customer tab. So the main screen that pops up is like the entity. So if in case Amazon was a customer and a vendor, they would have multiple tabs. In here, you see how this warehouse is blank? Right underneath salesperson, there's a warehouse field. If you don't have a default location for the customer, it'll use your user default location that's set up in the user menu for your personal user. So in this case, I have iRely admin set to go to location 1, and I'm sure Jimmy has his set up under location 1. So in this case, location is always filled in with something. If we were to switch Amazon and change it to, go ahead and do the drop-down selection under that warehouse field. If we were to switch this customer into, let's say, location 5, as soon as we click New and select Amazon, go ahead and save it. This is a test environment anyways. And then we'll go ahead and close this screen once it's finished saving. And it'll, go ahead and do that. And then we're going to go ahead and reselect the customer for me. You may have to switch to a new customer and then change it back to Amazon.
Okay.
And then switch it back to Amazon, and you can type it in. So notice how it defaults to the location in their warehouse. So if, in this case, the invoice we're going to put in actually needs to go to location 1, so I'm going to have you switch that to location 1. So it is something you have to pay attention to because we are pulling that information in from the customer file. And notice on the next thing to note here is the invoice number on the right side. Currently it's blank. The invoice number is assigned as soon as you save the document. So unlike Origin, it defaults to a number. So if you want to modify it, just like Origin in this case, you do have to plug something in there or change it if you need to change it to like a manual ticket number. So go ahead and type in 123 in there. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the item number field, and let's enter product code 300239. And then type in the amount to, and then the price of $198.50. So now this screen is already defaulted to a specific view. So there's a lot more columns in this screen. So if you right-click any of the columns for me, Jimmy, and just show everybody and click columns, there you go. You can see that there's a lot more options that you can expose. Now, not everybody or every industry is going to need this. So you kind of have to decide what grids you want to show and where you want to move them, so that way for tabbing or data entry, whatever is the quickest for you guys to use. So in this case, we had shipped and price all the way next to the tax and the total, but you can actually move them around. So if you go ahead and click shipped, for example, or you can do that, whichever column, left click it and then move it to somewhere else. There you go. And then what you would do is click the view button next to, right above vendor rebate. There's a little view drop down. There you go. And then you can say save if you want to save it to your company default, or you can say save as and you can have your own. And then give it a name. And say okay here. So now the next time you come, that'll be your view that you can default to. But now what I find that it's when you have a description right before the shipped, you're going to have to tab through that. So I find it that, you know what, I know what the description is, or I know what the product is by just looking at it because it'll pop in. So all I want to do is type in my item number, my ship number, and my price. Then I can just look at everything else and then save it, or go down to the next line and put in your next item number. So now if you did do that, go ahead and go back to the view for me, Jimmy. And then click company default because you want to go back to the original. There you go. So now go ahead and insert the word, your freight product code underneath the first line item, and that's FRT.
Right here? Yeah.
Yep. And I think it's just FRT. Sorry.
Oh. You said FRT.
Mm-hmm.
And then put in 1, and then put in $66. Okay, and in this specific example you guys sent me, there was also a negative line of FRT. So go ahead and go to the third line and type in FRT again. And then put a -1 in the shipped, and then a positive 55.56. So this is similar. I think in origin we put a negative line item too in the quantity section, and so it should calculate the same way. We won't talk about the tax group in this specific example because there's no taxes related to this transaction, so we can't really show that. So we'll talk about that once I have an example up with taxes. The due date, rather than it being at the top where origin was, it's down towards the bottom, and it gives you the terms code as well as when it's due. So now let's go ahead and you can go ahead and save this transaction or post it, whichever way you want to go. If you post, it will save and post at the same time. If you just save, you can post it later. And then I'm going to show you guys where you can print the invoice if it's just this invoice you want to print, and or email. So let's go ahead and click print for me. And then from this print, you can just click that first printer icon on the left side. The other one is just printing the page, the current page you're on. But if you had a customer that had multiple pages, you wouldn't want to print just the current page. Otherwise, you won't see like the secondary one. So you always want to click the first one just to make sure. And then this will open up the Chrome like printer selection. And at this point, it's outside of the software. It's however it's going to get to your local printer. And there's no specific settings. If you can print to a Word document or from a Word document, it's using the same kind of criteria. So you can do save as PDF as well. So we can go ahead and cancel from this screen. And you can also, there's little diskettes. Click the first diskette from the left, and that will allow you to download the PDF in your downloads folder, and you can move it from there to a different folder if you would like. Or if you download it and you want to email it or what you need to do, however you need to use it. Now, unlike Origin, we don't store these PDFs. So the download would be the way for you to store a document, because you can always go back in here and reprint it if you need to. So go ahead and close this screen for me. And then I'm just going to talk briefly about the tabs up at the top. So if you guys have access to tank management or the voucher grid, specifically the voucher grid, this looks a lot like that screen, because a lot of these are framework tabs that we've added throughout the system. So prepaids and credit memos will show any potential unapplied caches or credit memos that this customer may have, where you can apply it to those specific invoices or credit memos with whatever amount you need to apply to. Currently, Amazon doesn't have any, so it's not showing. So if you wanted to do that while you're invoicing a customer, you could do it at this time. If you click the Instructions tab, the Instructions tab is, and we'll use this later since this is posted, we can't modify it. The Instructions tab is where you would insert your comment if you have a comment about this specific invoice that you want to print on the invoice itself. Now, if you were using our default invoice format, you can have, I can't say a lot, but you can have more than what you currently are using as far as characters in the invoice comment. You could still have as much as you want in the screen. You can see it yourself, but when it prints, it will cut it off. And you can also, the footer comment would be if you were using ours too. So go ahead and click the post history. We're going to skip unpost preview for now. The post history will show you the journal entries posted to General Ledger. So as you can tell here, the journal entries are a lot different than how it used to be or how it is in Origin. Currently in Origin, we just update AR and then the item codes as far as on the sales side and then any taxes. In I-21, we're posting sales and cost of goods as well as inventory at the time of the sale. So when you put in receipts, and then we'll talk about that when we get to that portion, at a different date, which reminds me, I don't think we have that in the schedule other than transports, so we'll talk about it then. When you put in receipts, it will no longer hit the cost of goods. It will hit inventory as a debit, and then credits pending AP clearing, which is pending payables. So that all will change, and we'll talk about it at that time. So now let's go ahead and click attachments. We're going to skip payments. Attachments is where you can insert any kind of document that you want to apply to the invoice. And in the future, another customer of ours actually paid for a way to create add an attachment to an invoice. So when you email the customer, that additional document can be sent with it. So it's still in development, so I'm not really sure how and where and how it will work. Just know that, hey, that functionality will be available in the future for you guys to use if you guys need it. And then the audit log is just like the ones in tank management or in the voucher screen, that if once you save it and then you unpost it and you make modifications, it will show you what you've done, and you can keep clicking on the little arrows to see what's happened. Now, if you do unpost it and delete it, the audit log is gone because our record no longer exists in the system. So just know that it's here as long as a transaction exists. Now we can go over to the Activities tab. The Activities tab allows you to put in comments in regards to the invoice. If you wanted to create an event or a task that's related to this, it may not be quite as useful for this invoice unless there's a specific, note that you needed. I find that I use the comment a lot more when it comes to either customer or vendor entities, so that, that's where we place all of our information in regards to that entity. It looks like we have approvals in the invoice screen now as well. That was added in 19.1. I've not actually used it, so if you guys find it that you need to go over the approval process on the sales side, let me know. We can go through that. I know it's heavily used by some of our customers, including ourselves, on the voucher side. So we won't go over that today, but know that we can go through that if you need to or have a need for it. Now go ahead and click the Unpost Preview tab for me. The Unpost Preview tab is pretty much showing you what the journal entries are going to be if you were to click Unpost on the screen. So it's essentially just reversing the entries that were there before. So let's go ahead and go back to the Details tab. Does anybody have any questions about what I've mentioned in here so far? We didn't really go over tax group and freight terms yet. That'll come once I have an actual tax calculation on the screen. If not, then we'll proceed. This accrual button, it's mainly for us here. So we have, like for example, we bill swing quarterly invoices, but then you don't want to really expense that out at your end we don't want to recognize the revenue for that quarter invoice in 1 month. So what that accrual allows you to do is, dependent on your post date, you can extend it out to 3 periods forward. So in this case, if I had a 3 in there and our post date is June 27th, it's going to take the sales total and split it in 3 months. So it'll be July 27th, August 27th, September 27th. It won't be recognized all in one period. So if you have any kind of rentals or anything like that you're invoicing out to customers, this is one way to have the system accrue it for you rather than you making manual journal entries at the end of each month to move unearned revenue into a different period. So some customers have that, but I didn't know if you guys have a need for it. But we do have that available in the sales side. So now what we're going to do next, so that was the Louv's invoices that I just showed you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll talk about fuel invoices that have taxes. So go ahead and click New for me, Jimmy, and use customer code COU country 06 or COUNTR 06. So this message there, well, it just tells you the past due balances. So we probably need to go see what's going on. So in this screen, there's a customer main bill to, and there's a ship to location. Now, I've noticed that most of your customers, maybe except for Nick, so this may not be a good example. Let me click this ship to field for me, Jimmy. Does this, the drop down selection. Okay, so they don't have one. So we'll bring up another customer that has multiple ship to so we can talk about that. Or maybe I can find one. No, we'll just go with this. Okay, so do you have a potential customer that we can bill like fuel to that may have a different ship to address? I don't have one that's in this edit list. We can just try Nick's.
Nick, they know Nick's. Or no, if you just lose.
I've got
And
a
you
lot
would
of.
pick,
Yeah. Okay.
so here what you would select is the main bill to customer.
This one. Top one.
Okay, so now let's go ahead and click the ship to drop down, the magnifying glass. Okay, so what's happening in I-21 is in Origin, if you had multiple ship to that has a matching bill to, we converted them all as customer numbers just because we needed to make sure that they're in their system and we didn't want to delete them. But when we go live, when you tell me to do so, we can make all of the ship to customer codes, which is the first field. We can make them inactive because they will exist in the ship to, and you don't want to accidentally select the wrong main customer in that customer number field. So what you have to do from now on is think about whatever code you type in the customer field is where all the history is going to hit. So the statements will go under Pick Quick. If you look at customer inquiry screen, it's going to look under Pick Quick. But then there's also a ship to field now. So in this case, if we're doing a delivery to quick number 4, to go ahead, you already have it picked. In many of the history or the sales history report, we will use quick number 4 as a ship to location, and the taxes will be based off of that. So let's go ahead and tab out of there for me. And I think this one, we're going to use item number 4301. And then let's just do shipped amount 1926. And the dollar value is $2.0505. Okay, so you see how the tax group defaults to NCROB? If you click that ship to hyperlink, it'll open up the maintenance record for this location. And it will default to the tax group that's in this location screen because the freight terms is currently set to deliver. So on the right side down there it says freight terms deliver. What this is saying is that whenever you sell to this location, their taxes should always be based off of the location's tax group, not your company's location, where you're not like company location 001. So that's how it knows it. It looks at a combination of the freight terms, and based off of freight terms, it'll look at the tax group for that location. So let's say if you go ahead and click the down arrow in that freight terms field, the other alternative you will use is pickup. And there you go. pickup means that, hey, I'm going to sell this product to this location but I don't want you to charge locations for tax group. I want you to charge at my locations, which is where they're picking up the product from, which would be location 1. So go ahead and we're going to change this back to deliver. And I'm just going to show you where that setting is in company location. So we just have to make sure that company locations is set to the proper tax group if in case you have customers you're selling to that should be charged your taxes and not theirs. So go ahead and close this screen for me and don't save it. So now up at the top it says location 001. Click that hyperlink for me. And go to setup. So the tax group here, the default, if it was a pickup invoice, it would charge NCRIC taxes and not NCROB. So let's go ahead and close this screen. And just so we can kind of see that change, go ahead and up at the top, it says freight terms deliver. There you go. Change that to pickup for me. Okay, you see how the tax group changed to NCRIC? So if you did need to charge your taxes, you can just change the freight term up at the top, or you could have also changed the tax group, because that tax group it's dynamic. It doesn't, you can click in it and change it if you would like. So even if those two are wrong, just say your customer is set up incorrectly, you can change it on the fly if you need to. But the freight term delivers the default. So we're going to go ahead and switch that back to deliver. So it looks like now it's not defaulting. I need to write that. Go ahead and select NCROB. Where am I? Which invoice am I on? Okay. When switching to deliver, to pick up, then back to deliver, tax group did not default. Okay. That looks right, I think. Now, PST, oh, sorry, that's probably, are they a prepaid sales tax type customer?
No.
Okay. So you can just type ROB and I'm hoping it'll bring up just a couple. And then enter. There you go. Is it not searching? I thought I had a regular ROB.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. So once you have the transaction in, the full amount of the tax is in that tax section, including FET, SET, all possible taxes. Now, to the left side of the item number, there is a little icon, that little plus button. And what the plus button will do is allow you to see the different taxes that's calculated, coming up with that total. Now, you're kind of, you wonder why there's all these zeros. All of the different taxes that's in the tax group NCROB will show on the screen. However, it's only going to calculate the taxes that is taxable to that specific product category, which is a class, as well as any exemptions, then those will just be zero. So in this case, it's charging the excise tax, the gas tax, federal, state, and inspection fee, and the lust tax. So what you want to do during your testing is the easiest way to make sure everything is set up correctly is to get a sales ticket edit list from a day's worth of work, which is what I had you guys send me, and enter those in the calculation, if not exactly the same, maybe off a penny or so. But you guys should be able to enter those in to validate against, to make sure that it's correctly set up. A lot of this is converted data. So it may be, it may be that I've converted it wrong or have the wrong tax rate and so on. But when you see something wrong with the calculation, please let me know, because then, especially with taxes, because we're going to copy the data from the test environment into the live, because taxes is the longest time to convert. So we prefer to just copy it over into the live environment, because those don't really change very often as far as rates. So just keep that in mind and let me know. All right, so let me go ahead and show you guys as far as the hierarchy of the taxes. So you know about the whole freight terms in the tax group. So up on top of the item number, there's a button called Open. If you click that, it'll open the item number that's currently checkmarked. So in this case, it's going to be, since we only have one item number, it's going to open up the item code 4301. And then if you click the category hyperlink, currently it's set to go to, it's linked to category or class number 100. If you click that hyperlink, it'll open up category 100. And this will show you all the different tax classes that's assigned to this category. So what this is saying, hey, is you know what? Any product that is sold under the category code 100 gasoline, these are all the possible tax classes. It's not tax code, but tax classes that could be charged. So now within tax classes, you'll have different tax codes, tax code rates, and so on. But what's linked to the product is the tax class. Just because state inspection, you can have North Carolina and South Carolina, so you don't want to necessarily have all different tax rates in here because it could vary. So we're going by the main tax class. Go ahead and close this screen for me. And then close this screen. Now, there are taxing exemptions as well. We won't go into that, but just know that there is a hierarchy that even though the product is taxable by these tax classes, if the customer has tax exemptions, they won't be charged that tax. Let me see here. So now let's go ahead and do post preview for me. We did not do that one earlier. The post preview is going to show you what the journal entries are going to be when you post this transaction. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it's doing the inventory and cost adjustments as well as at the time. Now, we can commit that the calculation is going to be consistent for accounts receivable, sales, the taxes, but the cost and inventory may change because part of the month-end process, and you don't have to do it month-end, you can do it daily. We have a customer that runs it every single day. There's a process to rebuild inventory valuation because we could be like backdating. So let's say this one is entered today, June 27th, but we forgot to put a receipt in from 2 days ago. So then you put the receipt in today, so obviously this cost isn't going to be right if you're doing first in, first out. Just because we forgot to put it in, we need to put everything in order of the date and the time that it was entered. So right now, assuming this gets posted today, it'll be, or at this minute, it'll be $3,510.52. Let's say you rebuild inventory valuation after receipts posted, those numbers may change. And so the financial statements will change, the sales analysis report will change because your cost valuation is different after putting in the receipt. So that's part of the reason why we did the rebuild, is to allow customers to be able to have a better valuation if you entered dates or receipts incorrectly, or if you entered it not in a timely manner. So I didn't want you to say, hey, you know what? It used to be $3,510. Now it's not. Why is that? But that's because of that. It's the whole rebuild process that we have given customers to use, so that way you can get it all valued correctly and timely. So now let's go ahead and click print for me. That will save the transaction as well as print the invoice. So right now, this looks like the one you guys are currently using. There is the ship to location is not on an invoice. that is in development, so I'm just waiting for that to be resolved. Right now it's only printing the bill to address and not the ship to address. So this particular transaction has taxes, so the tax detail will be on there as well. And in the total due, we didn't enter a PO number in the PO number field, as well as a comment in the instructions tab, so that's not printing here. So we should go back and do that so you can see what that looks like. So go ahead and close this screen for me, Jimmy. And then go back to the instructions tab and type a comment in here. And just be mindful, you could have a long one, but it's going to truncate it when it prints on your invoice. And then now let's go ahead and go to the details tab.
Details. At least, yeah.
And then type something in the PO number. And go ahead and save this record for me, or print it. What I don't know is if I'm required to click save in the instructions, so this is going to tell me that, since I didn't have you click save. Okay, so it does save it as well. I just see something though.
It did for the taxes.
It did not, you're right. It didn't this time. Close this screen for me. Let me see why it didn't. Oh, because now the taxes is gone and the tax group is gone. So what did we switch? We didn't really switch anything, did we? We just put in the instructions last. Okay, let me write that up. But that's the reason why, because one of our tabs, or one of the changes we made, changed the tax group, which it shouldn't have, because all we changed was the instructions and the PO. So I'll be able to recreate that hopefully and get that resolved. Swink. It really doesn't like your Rob, does it? Okay. So now let's go ahead and print it again. So number 1, number 2, tax group removed after adding instructions. Sorry, instructions and PO number. Print. Okay. So I'll get that written up.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and close this screen. And let's go ahead and post this specific transaction. All right. We're going to, from this, we're going to go ahead and close it unless you guys have any questions about this specific, yeah?
It's saying posted paid down at the bottom. We didn't do that as a cash sale, did we?
No. It was type as invoice. Next invoice type posted paid. Unpost it for me. Yeah, because we didn't change the type.
Okay.
Okay, so in this case, it's created a payment record, so we need to undo that, but it's not, what we did shouldn't have changed it into a cash sale. So I'll have to figure out why. Posted, paid, but not a cash sale. Do me a favor, go to the audit log for me. And we probably don't need to do this now because I should do the research on my, so we're not using everybody's time. Yeah, you know what, well, because I can't see you changing. invoice amount, tax, PO number. I don't see anything on here that would have triggered that, or that should have. So, number 3, okay. What's that last one? That first one up at the top. Does that just say posted? Yeah, no, that was that last piece that we added the tax group and changed the value from 0. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and close this right here, and we'll move on, and then I'll create those tickets in help desk. So the next transaction type I wanted to do was an actual cash sale. So this one should say posted and paid. Go ahead and click invoice for me and new. So there's different, we're going to talk about the source. Up at the top, there's a standard. Click that for me. I'm trying to see if that's where it comes from. Okay. So when you start using I-21 under tank deliveries or tank management, you'll know that it's from tank because instead of it saying standard, it'll say tank delivery when we bring the invoices in from tank management. The other one you'll use as well as the transport delivery if we're doing post-transports that's sent over to a specific customer. And you shouldn't have to do this, use it unless you're doing a manual tank delivery transaction. Then you do have to select it. Otherwise, your consumption site numbers and all of that won't print or show on the grid below. So if you click tank delivery for me, notice how some of those fields you need. Right. Like a manual ticket that you have to enter in because of whatever reason that didn't come in. So now let's, yeah?
With the delivery, does that mean it's kind of like an LP delivery? Is that what you're talking about?
Yep, transactions that went to tank management using the whole consumption site process.
Like with digital dispatch, is that?
Yep, sorry, yes. Because you guys are using tank management and exporting it to digital dispatch, right? Okay, yes, those transactions.
Okay.
So now what we're going to do is I'm going to have you switch that source back to standard. And then in the type, there's different types in there. Like in origin, we had credit O for order. So in here, you have invoice, credit memo, debit memo, cash, cash refund, customer prepayments. That'll automate from the payment screen. So you shouldn't have to use that in here manually, because if you do it in here, then it'll take you to the payment screen anyways. So let's go ahead and select cash. And then select the customer swing cash or swing C. And then in this case, put item number LPG20. And then 1, and then you can just let that price, that's okay. And let's go ahead and post this. So when you post a cash transaction, that's when it's supposed to say posted and paid. So the other one, I'm not sure what happened, but we'll figure that out. So when you do a cash type transaction in the system, it'll update the cash management bank deposit the bank deposit undeposited fund grid, where you pull these payments in and create a deposit slip with it. So we'll do that. It looks like we're probably going to run out of time, so we're not going to go into cash management until we do ACH and do payments at that time as well. And this one looks like it defaults to pickup because of the customer location terms, freight terms. So let's go ahead and close this, and I'm going to see you guys probably don't need to see another cash sale. We have the credit memo. There was let's say there's a week ending 5/12 to 5/19 sales ticket correction. So go ahead and select the type credit memo, and then use customer code QUALIT07. And then in the item, so that defaults to 290 because of the warehouse location. So that's good. And then type in 4201, item number. And then in this specific scenario, there was a correction that needed done for 180,000 gallons. And then 2.5305. And because in this case there's inventory impact, and it's going to adjust inventory, the cost, and all that stuff. So let's go ahead and post this. And then once this is posted, we'll click the Post History tab just to show you the profit center. So in this case, the profit center, or the location 290, has a default profit center 290 in the location setup. So all the sales, all of the inventory, GL account numbers will have to have profit center 290 in it. So you notice normally in Origin or currently, we don't segregate by location on the inventory GL entry. So in this case, we will be. So now, at the end of the month, or however often you guys want to reconcile it, if more than once a month, we would be able to look at the financial statements balance sheet for Profit Center 290 and compare it to the inventory running valuation or stock status as of that date for 290. So you'll be able to value, and it's not just going to be a lump sum showing it for all the locations under one account. See here? Now, for this specific transaction, I'm going to look at the sales, well, not the credit memo. We'll find another one. I was going to show you sales analysis. Let's see here. Go ahead and close this for me, Jimmy. We're going to just go through the debit memo while we're in this screen. So go ahead and create new. And let's create a debit memo for NIX 10.
Well, you're in the wrong thing. Back up.
Jimmy, a lot of these fields too, we can just remove from the display. So when we're further along and there's time, I can show you how to remove this from the control screens. So that way you don't have to see them. Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's NIX 10, NICS 10.
Yeah.
So is it best, after we key in a customer account, is it best to tab or enter?
It's tab. The enter button, well, the selection is the enter. The tab is to move you to the next field.
Okay.
So in this case, it looks like there's still a bunch of like characters after 10 because Origin had a bunch of empty space. So I wonder if it will help with your keystrokes if you were to remove the empty spaces, because you see how when you like select another customer, it has a wide blue, but really there's nothing there, but they're just spaces. So I wonder, let me write that down. Remove. I'm afraid to remove them right now though, only because I don't know what it'll do with tank management and like the conversion of that. So, but I'll write it down. Remove empty spaces after code from Origin. Okay, so when you do a debit memo, it'll default to the warehouse location, and if you need to change that to 001, you can. In this specific one, you guys left it at 710. Since we're using 710, it's also going to use the profit center for 710. So go ahead and go to the sales account field, which is the first column in the detail. So that was not there earlier when it was a standard invoice. Go ahead and type in 5600-6210. And then you don't need an item number. The shift would be 1, otherwise it'll calculate 0 times the price. And then the price will be $35. And then you do have something, you need to type something in the description. So in your case, you normally type in a comment. So I would say rather than using the instructions tab for comment in a debit memo, I would just put it in the description field. So type in 82327 or whatever. Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Still a number, usually.
Yep. So now we can go ahead and post the invoice.
Jimmy, you know how you're expanding, like, the description every time you put something in?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to do that every time, or can you set it? Like,
Once you set it. Yeah. It's like, let's try this. I had a question about, expanding the columns conception.
Uh-huh.
Once it's saved, will it remain the width?
You mean that width? You know, I don't know. I've not paid attention, but I will. You know what? Say, click view for me. But see, you only have one company default, and I wonder, you don't want to necessarily create an alternate view every time, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You could.
So I'll need to go out. Well, we need to finish.
Go. Oh, you can just click new from here, and then create another debit memo.
It did. They did.
They did increase it.
It saved the format.
Okay.
We'll change it to debit memo first. There you go.
Oh, so it's
Now, okay. It looks like it stayed, but close this and then go back and click new. Looks like it does. When you log out, just keep in mind those changes, because when you log out, I wonder if it'll go back to the company's default because we didn't save it. But you created your own view. That's right. Okay. So then that's the debit memo there. Let me see here. The inspection fee, there's no difference other than an invoice. You just use your normal item code, the environmental code. So we're not going to enter that in unless you guys feel like, do you guys need to do an environmental invoice? No? Okay. Let me see here. So, okay, the last thing I want to do is talk about sales analysis, just because we didn't go over that with the team here. So close this, and then go over to the report section and click Sales Analysis Reports for me. So the Sales Analysis Report is a grid format, so it's very detailed, and it's by item from the invoice. Even debit memo shows in here. So everything that's posted in the sales menu will show in here. So in this case, if you scroll over to the right side, it doesn't matter which invoice, we'll just show the numbers. It has all sorts of columns. You can start creating customized views, just like I showed you earlier in the invoice grid, and then share that with your team so that way you only have to create it one time. So when you look at an invoice for a specific one, for example, there it'll show you the line total, the amount of the tax, the margin, the cost. So pretty much, as long as the month is closed, you're not doing any more rebuild, you can you can filter this out how you need to match it up against a profit center report or something like that. So let's say location 290. You wanted to make sure that your sales analysis match against that by, just sales versus cost. So you should be able to go to your financial statement, print a profit center by location 290, And you can take that, left click that, and then take it up to the left side. Or drag and drop it. There, left click, I think. Yep, left click it. And then, oops. I think I had you clicked right in the wrong field, sorry. Sales analysis report. And then maybe not quite, or you can do that, right click and then filter. That's what I use. I don't use drag and drop very often, but you could do it. Yep. It'll add it on the left side, type in 290. I think. There you go. And then if you were trying to do a date range for the month, there's a date field. It's all the way on the right side. But what this is saying is, hey, you know what? I'm printing my financial statements. All these are invoices and credit memos. I should be able to take the total of the total sales, which is the line total, total cost, and say, you know what, that should be my margin, and your financial statement should match that, assuming there's no manual journal entries created, but it should, because these are the amounts that's in general ledger. So you have, and that's why when we get to this portion, Jimmy, what you can do is start creating specialized views, so that way you can share it with your team, and they don't have to recreate it, because there are a lot of columns that you don't need in here. So that way you don't have to keep hovering left, scrolling left and right. And this gives you the account ID number hit on the sales side. It doesn't show you your cost GL account numbers, but it does show you since this is a sales analysis, shows you your GL account number that it hit on the sales.
A lot of info.
And so, what I didn't show you last week was the tax report grid, but that's more for a month end, so let's not do that. Does anybody have any questions in regards to what I've shown you so far? I know you'll have them once you start getting in there and entering invoices, and I'm welcoming. So whenever you guys are ready to enter those, go ahead and do so. And just create help desk tickets for me if you guys have questions, so I can update them with notes or call you in regards to them if it's quicker to do it that way.
Did you get them set up in help desk, all of them, or have you done?
Oh my gosh, no, I did not. Jimmy, once everybody is done, can you show me? Can you log into Portal from this screen? Because unless anybody else, you can probably excuse everybody unless anybody has any questions, and I'll show you how to set them up in the portal.
Okay. I can't log in from this screen.
Okay.
Or can I click on the left reserver when I get there from here? That may not. No. I'd have to go to my computer in my office.
It hurts, but
okay.
I've got some other questions about that I can get with you later on about the test company user roles.
Okay. Oh, you know what? Do you want to just hang up on this one and then I'll call you back on the main line? Or do you want to do that? Okay, we'll do that.
Give me about 10 minutes. Is that fine?
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay.
Or give me, 15 minutes. I'll take a short lunch and then I'll call you.
Okay.